Let's go. Left foot, right foot, levitating.
I wanted to be one of the best basketball players to ever play. And anything else that was outside of that lane, I didn't have time for.
I think the best way to prove your value is to work, is to learn, is to absorb, to be a sponge. Right? But you always want to outwork your potential. You know, as hard as you believe you can work harder than that. And that's what I tried to do when I first came in the league. But you know, basketball is such a direct competition sport that me coming in at 17, I hated when like my teammates would say, you know, I get hit with an elbow, right? Shaq would hit me with an elbow in practice, and like, you know, Nick Van Exel would come up and say, "Are you okay?" I'm like, what? Are you okay? What the hell's wrong with you? You know, so like I always had that extra chip on my shoulder. So like every day in practice for me was really trying to annihilate everybody that I was playing against, because I wanted to prove you don't need to babysit me. Like I'm fine, you know. And so it's always that competitive nature, the work ethic, and curiosity. Because I asked a lot of questions. You know, playing with Bryant Scott, I asked him a lot of questions. Eddie Jones, who was great at chasing guards off the screens, and I didn't understand how to do that. I would sit with him before practice, after practice. Magic, James Worthy, Kurt Rambis, Kareem Abdul, all the Laker greats. I would always sit down and just ask them questions about certain games that I studied growing up. What actually happened there? What did you feel there? Why? You know, Bird tough to defend. Why? Because he looks slow as shit to me. So like, I'm missing something. So like, tell me what I'm missing. You know what I mean? And so I would always ask questions and try to learn as much as I could.
Much the same that I am now, actually, which is extremely curious. Extremely curious. I had a great teacher in high school. Her name is Jane Mastriano, who I'm still very close to. And she sparked my curiosity in writing. And the reason why I felt it was important at the time was not for the writing's sake, or not for storytelling purposes, but there are things in story, inherently in story, that can help me be a better basketball player, be a better teammate, a better leader, understand emotions better. So that's why I got into storytelling, actually. So it's just insanely curious, man. And you know, trivial things weren't going to pull my attention. It had to be things that were, I had a purpose. I wanted to be one of the best basketball players to ever play. And anything else that was outside of that lane, I didn't have time for.
At what age did that goal become crystal clear?
I made that deal with myself at 13 years old. 13 years old. That's the deal I made.
You were crystal clear about it.
Crystal clear.
And where did the inspiration come from?
The love of the game. The love of the game, the challenge. Like I would watch Magic play, I'd watch Michael play, and I would see them do these unbelievable things, and I'd say, you know, can I get to that level?
The biggest percentage of your focus was on one thing. Mm-hmm. Do you see it that way? Like that was my edge over everybody else?
I do. At the time, I didn't really understand that. You know, basketball for me was the most important thing. So everything I saw, whether it was TV shows, whether it was books I read, people I talked to, everything was done to try to learn how to become a better basketball player. Everything. At 13 years old, you know, I played the longer game, because my game wasn't about being better than you at 13. It was to be better than you when, you know, the chips are really on the line. So when you played at 13, I would size you up and see what your strengths and weaknesses are. How do you approach the game? Are you silly about it? Are you goofy about it? Are you good at it just because you're bigger and stronger than everybody else? Or is there actually thought and skill that you put into it? And when I'd play to my weaknesses. I wouldn't play to my strengths. I played to my weaknesses. Because when you're playing summer basketball, there's so many games. So there's not a lot of skill work being done. So when are you going to get better? When you're playing in competition situations, you're only playing to your strengths. Why? Because you want to win. So what I would do, I was work on the things during those games that I was weak at. Left hand, pull-up jump shot, post game. Right? So I have a strategy. And so then fast forward to when I'm 17, and my game is completely well-rounded, and that player at 13 that I saw at 13 is still doing the same shit at 17, now you got a problem.
That's right.
You got a problem.
And you saw that.
You got a problem.
And by the way, let me ask you, so that's high school. You go into the league. When you're going into the league, you're going with a lot of guys that were, you know, same age, you know, same class as you were going in.
Yeah.
were you sizing those guys up the same exact way as you did in high school?
I did, but in the NBA, it was actually easier because what I found in the NBA is a lot of guys played for financial stability. And when they came to the NBA, they got that financial stability. So therefore, the passion and the work ethic and the obsessiveness was gone. So I'm looking at that, I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna be like taking candy from a baby. No wonder Mike wins all these championships.
My philosophy was a very simple one, and this is where I think film plays a big part of my life. Rudy was one of my favorite films growing up. If you guys haven't seen Rudy, I suggest you watch Rudy. After watching that film, I come to understand if I could work that hard every day, being blessed with the physical tools that I have, what would my career be? And I made a promise to myself from that day that I was going to work that hard every single day so that when I do retire, I have no regrets. And that was the most important thing for me, is to leave no stone unturned, get better every single day. And if I lived that way, then over time, I'd have something that was beautiful. But that was my philosophy. It seems like a pretty simple one, but if you live your life to just get better every single day, you do that for 20 years, what do you have? Well, here's why practice was important to me. Not from just the standpoint that I enjoyed playing. Like, I enjoyed being there. I enjoyed getting better. But as a leader of a team, it's also your responsibility to elevate the rest of the guys. And what people tend to get stuck on a lot is saying, okay, the way to make players better is to pass them the ball when they're open. That's a very trivial way to look at things. What you have to do is you have to get them emotionally to want to be better. You have to get them to an emotional space where they wake up every morning driven to be the best version of themselves, right? And how do you do that? And in practice, for me, it was a chance to drive them, to challenge them. And this is where you have to know your teammates. Because if it's late, we just had a back-to-back and we had practice the next day, and you show up, and guys don't feel like going through the motions, don't feel like practicing. It's important to know each and every one of them individually, personally, because then you know what nerve to touch. Some guys, it's like, okay, come on, let's, we can do this. That'll get them going. Other guys, no. You got to figure out what button to push. Powell was always Spain. If I tell them how they lost in a gold medal to us and how they're going to lose again, how I'm going to beat your ass in practice just like I beat you in a gold medal game, he would hate that. He'd hate that. But that's what practice was. You have to drive them. You absolutely have to. And if practice is more intense and harder than a Game 7 will be, then a Game 7 will be easy. But if it's not, then that's when teams start folding and capitulating.
Seriously, what does failure mean? It doesn't exist. It's a figment of your imagination. What does it mean? Let's use happy endings, right? And then we can relate this to failure and why it's not existing. Like, everybody talks about, like, everybody wants a happy ending. Now let's go to the reality of it, right? Let's look at a fairy tale story. Let's look at Snow White. Mm-hmm. She gets a happy ending. She finds Prince, whatever, she goes on. She lives happily ever after. Well, I call bullshit on that, because 2 months later, the fact is they had an argument and he's sleeping on the couch. Right? So the point is, the story continues. The story continues. So if you fail on Monday, the only way it's a failure on Monday is if you decide to not progress from that. So to me, that's why failure is not existent. Because, if I fail today, I'm going to learn something from that failure, and I'm going to try again on Tuesday.
Well, with the kids, it's different. So, like, the communication with our children is that, Pops is working hard. This is the level of attention to detail you need to have in everything you do. So it's setting the example. Same thing with my wife. My wife's a stay-at-home wife. It's the hardest job, man. Right? So she works really hard at that. It's, and so her attention to detail with that as well are examples for our children. And then for my wife, it's, she's as competitive as I am. So she's like, listen, man, if you're going to be out here training 8 hours a day, if you're going to spend 9 months out of the year away from your family, you better fucking win the championship. What are we doing this for? What are we doing?
That.
What are we doing?
I love that.
But it's a balancing act. And that's the thing that's important, is understanding that we have to have so much energy because for like Natalia and Gianna when they were babies, especially Natalia because she was doing prime years, and I'd go to practice and I'd train and I'd play the game and I'd come home and I'd be sore and I'd be tired. And she wants to go swimming, she wants me to take her to the park, she wants to just jump on my back or whatever the case may be. You can't say, I'm too tired, I'm going to lay down. That's not fair. She don't know what the hell's going on, right? And if this was a game, you'd suck it up and play. I played games with the flu. I played games with 102-degree fever, man.